Good morning, folks. Welcome to the ESEA office hour for September. We appreciate you joining us today. We hope you are enjoying the fall-like temperatures that are in the air. As always, we just want to share a few things with you to be sure that they are on your radar and provide any updated information, as well as provide an opportunity for questions and answers along the way. So we encourage you to use the chat box in the interim of the slideshow. Our team is monitoring that. And at the end, we will also open up the floor for any questions that you may have that you would like to ask verbally. As you know, we're now past September 1st, and the due date for our FY26 ESEA application was September 1st. That is different than years past. As you know, there's been a lot of changes throughout the summer in regards to federal funding, and our team has been required, along with the support from our SAUs, to find ways in which to pivot but still meet everyone's needs. So if you have not submitted your FY26 ESEA Consolidated Application, we are encouraging you to work within your SAU team and be sure that you're updating accordingly. So depending on where you were in the process when the funds were released from the U.S. Department of Ed on August 1st, will really situate you and your team in regards to what the next steps are. Currently, even if you are in a final approval status in your FY26 application, the grant award notifications will only become available on October 1st. So again, if you're looking for that information in your application and you are most definitely and finally approved, you will not see that information for another couple weeks. It's the way the system is set up, and we wanted to be sure that as many folks in the final approval status would be available when we turn those grant award notifications on. If you are looking for specific information, you can always reach out to your regional program manager in regards to CFDA numbers as you're setting up your accounts at the local side. But again, that information will be available here in the next few weeks. We just wanted to constantly draw your attention to the fact that we know that there potentially is still transitions within your SAU in regards to who's managing, working with, and sparing the ESEA programs. So please be sure that you're keeping the address book and adding and deleting users accordingly at the local level. The reason why this address book is so important is because any information that we send out using Grants for Me utilizes the roles and the people associated with those roles in the address book. So for example, if we're sending out a notice about the office hour, we may be sending that notice to the LEA authorized rep, the ESEA coordinator, and the business managers. If you are not listed in one of those roles, you would not receive the notification for office hours. So again, it's really important that that address book is up to date and constantly being changed should the roles or individuals in those roles change. We also wanted to draw your attention to an item that was sent using the address book, and that was related to the FY26 ESEA monitoring. So any SAU that has been identified as medium or high monitoring status for FY26 through our risk assessment has been notified. They were notified the second week of August, so just about a month ago. And we will be providing a training for the folks who are medium and high on Thursday, October 16th. So we wanted you to have that information should you be in a situation where your risk level has indicated a high or medium risk status. We encourage everyone to participate in that training. It will provide you information about how this next monitoring cycle is structured, what the items are going to be in collection, and how our team will support you folks in regards to the questions and clarifications of each of those items. This year, one of the major changes that we will discuss a little bit more in our ESEA monitoring training on October 16th is that we are moving to one collection window. So you'll see on this slide, that our due date for all the desk audit monitoring items is due January 9th. The portal itself in Grants for Me will open November 1st, and we will provide additional information at that Thursday, October 16th training.
Great. Good morning, everybody, and happy back to school week. That means summer programs are over. I'm excited to read about how they went, and it is important that we close out these reallocated funds and have the performance report done by October 17th. In order to do so, you want to complete all invoicing related to this grant sooner rather than later. Again, right, these are these additional summer funds, and you have a lot on your plate with regular school year and ESEA Consolidated. So best to kind of keep this as efficient as possible. You want to move the application to revision started in order for it to be editable. There's one page for the performance report. It's not like our consolidated that has multiple pages. There's just one. But please read it carefully because it's nearly impossible for me to tell when districts are done invoicing, because oftentimes not every single fund or dollar is spent. So if you have $100 left or $1,000 left, it's impossible for me to know that you're actually done invoicing unless you communicate that clearly. So when you do have that one page of reporting, please read it carefully. Understand the checkbox that you're checking off if you are done invoicing and returning those funds that you were unable to spend. That does happen because positions can't always be filled, etc. So we understand that as part of this grant, but I cannot tell. So you'll have to do your due diligence to communicate that with me. And once you are done, you'll go to that sections page and click revision completed. I will review that your expenditures match your invoices. I will look at the outcomes of your goals, and I will look at your program details. So your attendance, your teachers, your students, what was really in reality the program after you had applied in theory for what you wanted the program to be. So this all helps us understand these programs, these funds, the use of them, the importance of this. And so please take your time to do this, and it is due October 17th. And because it is back to school time, it's a good moment to remind folks about family engagement requirements in Title I. Again, Title I has quite a bit of specific statute related to family engagement, so it's very important for you to know and to have these systems in place so that every year you're meeting requirements and supporting your parents with effective communication. So there's a parent's right to know letter. You'll notice too that when you get monitored in ESEA, a lot of these family engagement requirements are required to be submitted. So again, very good to know that you are properly working with your parents, you're sending the right notifications. Parents' right to know deals with sort of two aspects of statute. It deals with professional qualifications of students, teachers, and paraprofessionals. So you send out a letter that says, hey, parents, you have a right to know what the qualifications of your teachers are. And if you want to know, you can reach out to so-and-so. Maybe it's a principal, maybe it's a Title I coordinator. The same goes with your state, local, and assessment policies. Does your school or school district have ways in which you deal with assessments, your calendar, which ones? They have a right to request that information. So sometimes I see SAUs use these notifications to share all the policies, but what this statute is actually referring to is just that they have a right to know. So the letter can be posted in the student handbook, it can be on the website, it can be sent through an email, but you get the idea here that you are communicating to your Title I parents that they have a right to know their teachers and the assessments and what they are required to do. So if it does live in your handbook, which I see a lot of, the best thing to do is ensure that you have a way to say, hey, here's your handbook for this year. These are some important passages. These are important pages to review. Please know your rights as parents. There is an annual meeting that's required. I think for most school districts or schools, Title I schools, this is not going to be a crazy out of the blue requirement because of how much you're already facilitating family engagement evenings with your parents. but understand that Title I requires that bit of explanation and of sharing of information of what a targeted assistance program is, if that's what you're running, or what a school-wide program is. And again, just effective practices so that your parents and your children are all aware of what the school is and the programming it offers. And the last bit are school parent compacts. A lot of these, specifically the annual night, the compacts, and some of these notices are actually outlined in most of your family engagement KBF policies. So when I go onto your school websites and I see that you have an SAU level family engagement policy, oftentimes it comes from the Title I statute, and it comes and explains all of these particular aspects. So a compact is just one part of your family engagement policy for Title I schools, but it can be a really effective practice because essentially what a compact does is it outlines what parents are responsible for, what teachers are responsible for, and what the student is, and perhaps the district administration. So this is a good chance. Review your KBF family engagement policies. If they do come up to your policy committee in your school boards, have the survey go out on the website to ask for parent feedback about that compact, about the policy. Then you know what you're doing is stewarding good relationships with your parents, and you're being really, really transparent about what you expect out of them. And maybe it's attendance, right? Maybe it's good communications and what they should expect out of you. If you have questions, let me know. And we do have a reference guide online that I'll pop in the chat.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you who work with non-publics, in order to opt into Title I equitable services, your non-public school that you work with will have to submit data to the state. So that way we can calculate the proportional shares that the non-public is eligible for. We had a webinar on this topic on September 2nd. I can drop the link in the chat. If you work with a non-public, please share that link. That would be the first step to trying to be eligible for Title I proportional shares. We now use the student data system, the Maine State Student Data System, to collect the information for Title I proportionate shares. We need to collect their low-income student information. We're looking specifically for low-income students who would have attended a Title I school. That's where the proportional share is generated from. So the data team has decided to stick with Synergy for this round of data collection. So it'll be the same process as last year. They are still in the process of shifting to Connect, but push back that rollout date. So you'll see in the webinar that we are addressing how to input this data in the Synergy system. So again, we made a little note there at the bottom, ESEA coordinators who work with non-publics, be sure to alert your non-public school officials if they want to receive Title I funds for next year, for FY27. The first step is submitting that data, which is due October 1. So if they don't get it in by October 1, then they will not be able to generate proportional shares. Please reach out to me and your regional program manager if you have further questions. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. I bring happy news for many of you that you'll be receiving some additional funding this afternoon. So as you've heard us talk about for the last few months, due to an MOA between the Maine Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Education, some SAUs were negatively affected by some changes we had to make to our allocations process. And as promised, we are going to be reallocating some FY25 funds to those who were negatively affected by that. So by the end of the day today, you are going to see in your FY25 ESEA application, likely a revision started to that application as we load funds on this line in the allocations page that says additional. So your original or your initial application is in that top line, and then in the red box there, you'll see any additional funds you're getting. And I'm going to post the link for funding and those preliminary amounts in the chat right now. Again, about half of our SAUs had that negative impact to their FY26 allocations, so we're reallocating some FY25 funds to make up for that. So what does that mean for you if you're one of those SAUs receiving reallocated funds? Well, you'll need to budget those funds into projects in your FY25 application and make sure they're spent down before those funds expire in just over 1 year. So by 9/30/26. You can do that now if you've got plans for those funds, or if you want to wait until you're going into that application to do the performance report in the next month or two, feel free to wait. There's no harm in leaving your application or revision started status if you kind of just say, you know what, I'm too busy right now to worry about that few $100 or $1,000. If you wish to spend those funds on something new that's not previously approved in that application, you'll need to describe that on the project details page and get that approved by your regional program manager. But if you're looking to spend those funds on things that are already approved, you'll just revise the budget and submit it. There's no need to describe what you're spending it on if you've already had that approved. And lastly, for those of you who have non-public schools and you're providing equitable services with Title IIA, you're probably aware that each fall during the performance report, we have some pretty strict guidelines on when carryover for equitable services can happen. So in this specific scenario, since they are entitled to equitable services with these additional funds, we will waive those kind of strict requirements. We'll give a blanket carryover waiver for those folks so that their students also can benefit from the reallocated funds at the same percentage they received in FY25. If they have not yet had any of their FY25 equitable services spent at this point, we'll probably be looking for some justification for carryover anyways, so those funds don't sit and be unspent. But as long as things are kind of going smoothly, they still have the same access to these reallocated funds that you folks do. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
So we wanted to share a little bit of information with you folks from our colleagues in the Maine Engagement and Attendance Center. What we would like to encourage you folks to do is utilize the information on this slide, which we will pop the link here momentarily. What our colleagues in the Maine Engagement and Attendance Center is really looking for is those success stories, because nationwide, we are celebrating September as Attendance Awareness Month, and there has been a fair amount of resources that this new center has provided to the field. They've hosted some trainings. They're going to be doing some Monday memos. They were at the summit with presentations, and really their website launched this summer in July, and they're really hopeful to be able to have those success stories from you folks to be able to enhance what it looks like to have good, strong, evidence-based interventions that also increase attendance.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tyra Corson. I am the ESEA Management Analyst, and we're going to talk a little bit about grants for me today. As you know, due to the delay in federal funding for FY26, it is possible that you will see 2 substantial approval dates in your FY26 application. The substantial approval date for titles 1 and 4 may differ, 1 and 5 may differ from 2, 3, and 4. So just be aware of that. It will show up in your FY26 application, the substantially approved page. FY25 Title I reallocated summer performance report is due, and you must invoice for all of your expenses before you will receive an approved performance report for those funds. FY26 ESEA funds, reasonable, necessary, and allocable. As always, just because it's an allowable expense does not mean that it's reasonable and necessary. So please be cognizant of that. And those terms are all defined in 2 CFR 200, 403 to 405. The period of performance and period of allowability are often terms used interchangeably. This period of the grant begins on the substantial approval date of your application and ends when the grant ends. POs, here's here's just a little thing, especially with FY23 funds expiring. POs can establish an obligation, but not an expense. What does this mean? Obligation is defined in EGR 76.707. When obligations are made, we encourage you to review these regulations. A PO with a vendor can establish an obligation. However, it does not establish an expense because the items or services do not become an expense until after they have been received. Internal POs are created within the SAU's accountability system and does not establish an expense. Therefore, confirmation of the purchase is necessary to make sure the expense, supply, or service is established during the period of performance. Contracts must not include dates prior to the substantial approval date of the grant funding the contract. Reimbursement requests. A detailed expenditure report must be uploaded as a PDF. We do not accept Excel spreadsheets for this backup. When you are requesting reimbursement for wages, both salaries and benefits must be requested. This is important when you are splitting a service period between 2 grant years. So please make sure that you split the salaries and benefits up appropriately. Service periods for reimbursement requests, no more than 3 months. Monthly, if you receive more than $250,000 in ESEA funding. Additional backup for PD travel and tuition reimbursement may include name of staff participating, dates of travels or attendance for school. Reimbursement must be requested after the fact. And I do want to remind folks, we do not pay for miscellaneous fees for travel. So your travel agent fees, we do not reimburse those. Your seat selection, if that is in addition to the base fare, we will not reimburse for that. Invoicing and grants for me. If you are gung-ho to start your next invoice when you submit the invoice that you just completed, but it's for a future date, Grants for Me will not accept that even when the date comes. So you have to delete the invoice and start again. If you are receiving only partial payment, the reason for that is more than likely because funds were transferred from another title into, for example, Title I. You cannot invoice. All invoices have state accounting system paid that were previously submitted. It has to have that before you can submit another invoice. All funding sources associated with a pending invoice must be paid out. So again, if you have transferred funds from, say, Title I to Title I, this is a Title I invoice, you must receive payment from both Title I and Title II before you can submit another invoice. This is a reminder that funds are ending 9/30/25. All the highlighted ESEA funding below is expiring. Please get your invoices in as soon as possible. This is important. We always want to bankrupt the grants. We don't want to have to return funds to the feds. The next slide just is an informative slide to let you know that this is what is still available to spend in these grants. And those are FY23 ESEA, FY24 ESEA, and FY25 ESEA. And the tier 3 is school improvement. I want to thank everyone that made time to come out and spend time with us for the boot camp at the Educator Summit. We had a good time. We shared a lot of good information. The next federal fiscal office hours will take place on October 23rd at 10 a.m. I encourage anyone that handles federal funds or federal programs to attend. And I will drop the meeting registration link in the chat.
As always, we share this information with you folks every month that we as a department host a wealth of professional learning opportunities, from office hours like this to the federal fiscal office hour, and other teams within the department hosting an array of professional learning opportunities. To be able to find those professional learning opportunities, this link will direct you to the Department of Ed's event calendar for all of you folks to visit. We're going to leave you with our contact information before we open up the floor to any questions that may not have been answered in the chat box. However, the team did a great job at responding to all the questions. But we also want to be sure that we have some time to open up the floor to you folks for any questions or any lingering items that you would like some additional information about.